Hello everyone, thank you for joining me on another live stream, this time on Saturdays. Let me check the chat. I think I saw a couple of people already in here. Bugar, how you doing? Thank you for joining me. Hassan as well, thank you for joining me. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I think I'm ready to start a new project on Saturdays. I'm gonna try to keep the Saturday schedule, Saturday nights. But if for some reason I need to move it, I think I'm sticking with nights instead of mornings. But we'll see how the Saturday schedule works. Douglas, hello from Brazil. Thank you for joining me. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope everyone is. But yeah, the purpose of this new live stream is, I don't know if anyone remembers, but I think I mentioned this before in a different live stream. The idea is that a little bit of background first. I'm from Costa Rica, and in Costa Rica, there is this website that has been. Oh, you're not seeing anything, by the way. There you go. In Costa Rica, there is this. Anyone who wants to buy a used car, basically by default, goes to this website. And it's all in Spanish. Apologies for that, but you'll get the sense of how it works. The problem that I have with this website is not about its functionality. It's not aesthetically appealing to me. And I find it fascinating that it's been running for 25 years and it does the work perfectly and everyone uses it. If you want to buy a used car, you go to this website. It's basically the option, the most popular option. So same thing if you want to sell a car. So my idea is to create a product or a minimum viable product that does something of the likes of this website. And I'm shooting for a 10-week period. So I'm setting myself I'm going to say soft deadline in this case, because I don't know if I'm going to keep it, but I'm shooting for a 10-week series just to have a minimum viable product. And it's going to be a project created with Laravel, Livewire, and we're going to use Filament as well for both the front end and for the admin panels. So that's the general idea. And as far as task goes, let me close a few windows here. I don't need this. Don't take out memory. No, you can stay. So as far as tasks, I have prepared a few things that I want to cover today and next week. So I don't know how much we're going to cover. By the way, I'm also shooting for like an hour or so each week. So I'll try to be as productive as I can, notwithstanding this long introduction. But for today, at least, what I want to do is just set up the new project. I know it's repetitive and some people already I've seen this 1,000 times, but I always like to keep that part in just in case someone likes to see that process. And for the database or for the architecture, I'm going to use again Laravel. I'm going to use Livewire, Filament, Tailwind CSS for the styling, and SQLite for the database. I'm not going to use anything fancy. So I have a few tests that I want to create today. That's another thing. I'm going to try and test as much of it as I can. Testing Livewire components, testing models, testing Filament resources. As much as I can test, I will. So for today, I'm going to focus on the project and creating the few first tests for the Livewire components that we need. And starting with the list of cars. I'm going to try and start with showing a list of cars on the screen using a full page Livewire component. And I'm going to then rework it into a filament table. So let's get going, shall we? first thing I'm going to do is to create a new project. I always like to use the Laravel installer with Laravel new. And then let's call this Laravel used cars. I'm not going to use a starter kit just yet. I don't think I'm going to need it, but we might need it later. I don't know. For now, let's go with no starter kit. We're going to do pest for the testing. And yes, I would like the GitHub repository. I will have a link to the GitHub repo on the description of this video once it's done. For database, again, let's go with SQLite. Let's give this a minute. There you go. Now we go into this project folder. Used cars. Clear the screen. And let's see. Good evening there. Good evening there and good morning here watching from the Philippines. Hi, thank you for joining me. I am John Dev. So let's bring in Filament right away because I know I'm going to use admin panels at some point. So I'm guessing I'll just install the whole panels thing. And I'll use tables for the front end. Let's see, get started. Composer require Filament 3.2 with all of the requirements. And this will take care of installing Livewire as well. I'm not going to bring Tailwind CSS just yet, not until we actually get into the front end. So when we get to the point, then I'll get that into the project. So as far as requirements, I think that's all I'm going to need. So let's open this in Visual Studio Code. And let's get started with the first test. Let me zoom in. Let me know if the size is okay. Yay, I'm excited about this project. Me too, actually. Yes, I'm always excited to create some new project and start working on it. The reason I started this, so I mentioned this like a few weeks back, but I wasn't, the project was not fully formed in my head and I didn't want to just wing it. But yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm very excited to start. So let's, what do we do here? I'm going to create a first test. But for that, let's first open PHP unit.xml to get a few things taken care of. For example, the database connection is going to be SQLite. What did you do? SQLite for the database, and I'm going to work on an in-memory database for all of the tests. And I think that's pretty much it. So I think we can make sure that pest is running. With pest, you have a couple of example tests that we can get rid of in a moment. But let's get started with list of cars. And the first thing I want to do is make sure that since I'm going to use a full page Livewire component, I'm going to first make sure that I can render that component with no problems. So it renders the component. And let's do PHP pest test. And I always like to name my test files the same way as my component. So in this case, let's come up with a good name. Car list car list or car list test. So the component is going to be car list, and we're going to create a test file for it. Could not open input file test. Oh, sorry. Artisan. Right? Let's open that file. It's in the feature folder, car list test. It has a car list page. Let's rename this to it renders the car list page or component. Remove that, and the way that we go about this is basically we just do livewire test to mount the component, and the component name is car list, or will be at least, class, and it's not going to have any parameters. And once we do that, I want to make sure that this returns a 200 code, status code, and so we can just say assert OK. All right, first test. Before we do that, let me just remove the example tests from the feature folder and the unit folder. Oh, if you are not familiar and you have not seen the other live stream that I run, the way that I run tests is using this component, this extension for Visual Studio Code called Better Pest. You can create your own shortcuts, but what I use is basically I do Shift Control P or Shift Command P in Mac, and then I have these two Better Pest as the most recent ones. One I use to run the current test that I'm at. The run previous, it runs whatever, it runs the previous test that I just run. So it helps me if I'm in somewhere else doing some editing to the code. I can just do editings and then run the same test again. And there is another one for run suite, which will run all of the tests. So for now, let's just use run here. And the error that I was expecting is that obviously the car list component doesn't exist. So let's create that PHP artisan. So remake livewire. You can also use livewire make if you prefer. Each of those, any of those works just the same. Car test, no, car list. There you go. Anything else on this? No. Congratulations, you just created your first livewire component. The class is on app livewire. The view is in resources views livewire. And all I have to do now to at least get that error, get rid of that error, is just import this class here. And then run the previous test. And first test, first pass, awesome. So that at least gives us the certainty that we can render this component. It doesn't matter if we render as a full page component or if we just include it on a Blade template, it's going to render just the same. The next thing that I want to do is I want to show the car brand, model, and year in the list that is going to be eventually show. So in the list of cars, each car is should have brand, model, and year. So let's get started with that. function. And now we come to the part where we have to arrange the things that we want to see or want to have in this test. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to create a car. So there should be a car model and its appropriate car factory. And the car factory should have also a model. And I'm going to use a relationship for the model, but for the brand. I'm going to use a relationship for the brand. So I'm going to have a separate table. But for the model, I'm going to keep that as a string field, because this website that I just showed you does have that as an open field. This word means model. So the brand is this one. So having a drop down means that this is in a separate table, but for the model, they just keep it as an open field. And I think it's simpler that way. That means that I can actually type in my model. I cannot predict, or I do not know how people will type in, or this should be an open field. So it's going to be a string. Felipe Santos. Nice. Felipe from Brazil. Thank you for joining me, Felipe. So car factory. The car should belong to a model, so I can use for. And in here, I can also create a model. Model? No, brand. Keep saying model. So brand. This should also have a factory. And let's set the state of this. I'm going to be specific about it. So the brand name will be, let's say, Toyota. So a car for a brand name Toyota. And thank you for the love in the chat. Thank you so much. Now let's set the state for the car itself. As I said before, let's keep the model as a string field, and let's say the model will be, what's a good Toyota model? I don't know, Corolla. Toyota Corolla. And the year, let's make it 2017. Oldie but a goodie. So we have a car factory for a brand, Toyota. It has model Corolla and a year 2017. And since this is a list, I'm going to create 3 separate cars. So usually I would go with a sequence, but since the brand is, I want 3 different brands. I think it's easier if I just create 3 different cars. So I'm going to take all of these and duplicate it down below. Let's make these Hyundai. How do you spell? I think so. Let's make it a Hyundai Accent 2001. Very old cars, by the way. Used cars. And let's make another one, just to have at least 3. What's another brand? Let me check. What's the brands that we have here? An Audi. Audi. Make this an Audi. The model, I don't know about Audi models. Let's say A3. 2020, 21. Yeah, sure. Anyway, that will give me 3 cars in the database. And what I want to do is to make sure that, first of all, let's do Livewire test. And I'm going to mount the car list again. Car list. No parameters. And first of all, let's make sure that this is okay. And then all I want to do is make sure that all of the information from all of the 3 cars that I just created are showing in the table, or I can see them rendered in the final results. So I'm going to let's do assert see text. Very simple. So I want to see a Toyota Corolla 2017. And then a Hyundai Accent 2001. Finally, Audi A3 2021. Najid, how you doing, my friend? Thank you for joining me. Good morning to you as well. So yeah, this is basically what I want to see. This is going to force me to do a lot of work because none of those models exist. And so I'll have to create migrations and a bunch of stuff. But this is what I like about starting with testing. First of all, you get in the flow of programming. As soon as you start, you just keep going. That's the hard part. Just start doing something. So that gets you in the flow. And every error is just one edit closer, or a line of code closer to a green status, which gives you the motivation to just go again and again and add something else and something else. And it's just the best way, I think, to start a new project. Okay, let's run this to get our first error. What's that? Oh, you cannot use commas in the definition. Sorry. All right. First error. Car model doesn't exist. Let's create that model. PHP artisan make model car, and I'm going to cheat a little bit in the interest of time because I know that along with the car model, I'm also going to need a factory and a migration file. So M for migration, F for factory. That'll save me a couple of steps. All right. Rafael, hi, how you doing? Thank you for joining me. Sorry, man, but need to sleep. That's okay. Don't worry about it. This is going to live on YouTube for eternity, so you can catch the replay later. It's too late here in South Brazil right now, I understand. But certainly I'll continue watching this amazing content. Thank you so much. Before you leave, just leave me a like and have a good night. Hamad, hi, boss. How you doing? I'm doing great. Thank you. Okay, so we have the model. Now we have to import the model class, of course. Up here, use car. So let's save this and run the previous test. And now it's going to complain about the brand class, of course. So let's create that class the same way we created the car model. So now let's call it brand with a migration and a factory as well. Import the class and run again. Okay, so we get to the point where everything is in place apparently, but it's not showing the Toyota text in screen. And I'm guessing this is not the error that I was expecting, because I was expecting something related to the database, not having a table named cars or brands, etc. But I think I know what my problem is. And it's the fact that I never called create on any of these migrations. Any of these factories, sorry. So you have to call create so that the factory will actually attempt to create that record in the database and complain about it. So let's do one for this one and one for this one. And finally, one down here. Run the test again, and it shows call to undefined method app models car brand. This means that when I try to create a car, I'm assigning a relationship for that car to a brand. And it's using the brand function in the model to try and figure out that relationship, but that relationship doesn't exist yet. So here we are going to take a detour, because whenever you have to create relationships for models, what I recommend is that you create, another separate test just for the model. This I like to create these tests as unit tests. Wow, sorry, losing my voice. So I like to create model tests in the unit folder, because they're somewhat contained to just the model class. But then, we have to take a small detour to work on that. So let's do PHP artisan pest test. This will be car test, and it's going to be in the unit folder. Also, this is just personal preference, but I like to put them in a folder called models. So inside the unit folder, there will be another folder called models, and then the test will be inside that. Again, just personal preference. I like to keep my tests organized. So there you go. So now let's open that test. And what we are looking for here is just to make sure that the car model has a brand relationship. It has a brand. The way that we do this is I want to create that car exactly as I was creating it in the car list. So I'm going to borrow one of these definitions here. I do not care about the state in this case, so I'm not going to use it, which will create a few other problems, but we'll deal with those when they arise. And same thing with the car. I do not care about the model or the year in this case. All I want to do is to create a car for a brand in the database. And once I do that, so the car factory, that belongs to or one-to-many relationship. So the car will belong to a brand, and a brand will have many cars or will be assigned to many cars. So in this case, let's do expect car. Sorry, I do need to assign this car to a variable. So I expect car brand to be instance of brand class. So the first thing I want to make sure is that the result of calling car brand is an instance of a brand model class. And just to make sure that the brand name needs to be equal to car brand name. I don't know if that test is a bit redundant. I think it is. I think I'm satisfied with just having a brand instance coming out of it. This should be good enough. I'm not being specific about I want to see this exact brand. As long as the relationship exists, works, and gives me a brand model back, I'm good. So yeah, let's see what we got out of this. Let's run this test. And I didn't import the car class as always. Call to a member function connection. Oh no, really? Oh, I've seen this error before. Because we are running these tests on the unit folder, generally the connection or the database connection, or to be more specific, the application or Laravel is not bootstrapping. Basically, it's not creating an application for us, and therefore we don't have a connection to the database. So we need to do some settings here, some fixes, not to the test itself, but to the test configuration. Let me see if I remember what this is. Inside the tests folder, there should be a file called pest. And down here, is it here? Oh, yeah. See how this is using the base test class. And that base test class is the one that creates a test application environment for us. But this is only being used in the feature folder. So we need to add the unit folder as well here. And that should take care of that error. And I'm expecting some other error because this line is commented out, but let's see what error do we get first. Call to undefined method, car brand. Okay, so we need the relationship now. So let's go back to, or actually open the car model class. And let's add a public function brand. This is a belongs to relationship. Well, let's return this belongs to brand class. Run again. All right, now we have a problem because there is no table called brands, even though we do have a migration file, because we created both the factory and the migration when we created the model. So this is the problem I was referring to just earlier. In the best.php file, there is this line that is currently, or by default, is commented out. And that's the one that takes care of refreshing the database every time we run the test suite or we run a test. So in order for the migrations to take effect, we have to uncomment this line and then run again. Different error. Now the table does exist. We have a table called cars, but that table does not have a column named brand ID. So there is no foreign key between the brand and the car, brands and cars table. So let's go and fix that. We need to, I'm going to close this file. We need to go to the migration file now. That's in database, migrations, create cars table. Need to go to Arturo, too late in Brazil. I understand, don't worry about it. Thank you for your teachings. Thank you for being here and for showing up. You'll catch the replay later, and have a good night. So let's do table foreign ID for brand. This is how I like to create the relationships. There is another technique if you prefer to use that one, which is just using table foreign ID. And in this case, you name the column brand ID actually. But then again, you do have to create the foreign ID. Sorry, no, this will create the foreign ID if I'm not mistaken. Creates a new unsigned big integer column on the table. But this doesn't create, correct me if I'm wrong, this doesn't create the actual foreign ID constraint. I think it doesn't. I might have to check the documentation, but I think this doesn't create, and then you'll have to do table foreign specify foreign key for the table. I think it's the same thing. Yeah, I think it does create the relationship, but the only thing that I don't like is, I can't remember what it was. I think they're very similar. The only difference is that you use the class here, and then Laravel figures out what the name of the column should be. Foreign ID, brand ID, constraint brands. Thank you. Yeah, that's the thing that I was missing. So foreign ID, and then you constrain that to the table brands. And that's what, I guess is just an extra step, an extra call. So doing this is the same as doing this. The only difference is that you have one more import up here for the model class, which in my opinion, or in my personal preference, I do like that, because I am ensuring that I have a model class for the relationship or for the foreign key. So either way is fine. I personally like to use foreign ID 4 so that the constraint is created right away. I'm going to leave this here commented out for teaching purposes, and you'll find it in the repo later. Okay, so we have a brand ID. Now we can run the test again and probably get a passing test. Nice. All right. So now the car model has a brand, and then you can do table for an ID, brand, constraint brands, cascade on delete. Yeah, that's a good observation. If you want your table or your relationship to, if you have a parent model and a child model and you delete a parent, then all of the child models that were linked to that parent will be deleted as well. And that's all taken care of in the database. And actually, let's do that. I don't see why not. You can also do it in foreign ID 4, right? Foreign ID and then cascade on delete. Cascade on delete. Yeah, like that. So both of these support the cascade on delete option. What was the error? Oh, no error. Okay, so I was saying now the model has a relationship, and now that we have ended this little detour, we can go back to the car list test that was failing before, and then try to run this again. And the error saying that there is no brand method should be gone now, and we should get a different error now. So let's try this run. There is no table brands. Cool, there is a different error. So now we have to, no, sorry, the brands table, there is a table, but it has no column named name, which is totally understandable. Close a few things and then open the create brands table migration. And let's add one column, table. This will be a string name. All right, run the test again. Table cars has no column named model. Okay, now we have to modify the migration for the cars table again. Let's add one string column. What was it? Model. And run it again. And now it's asking for the column year in the cars table. Hard to imagine a brand is deleted. Yeah, it's a very unlikely scenario, to be honest. It will be very destructive if that were to happen. I'm trying to think of any possible scenario, but no, I mean, why would you want to delete a brand unless the site doesn't want to sell a specific brand at some point? I don't know. But still, the listings should stay there. We are not going to allow deleting of brands for that case. So I don't imagine me setting an admin panel and then allowing users to delete brands. They can create brands, maybe stop deleting just in case, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Also, quick tip. When you're doing these kind of tests, if you're new to them, I'm sure you'll be tempted to skip a few steps. For example, I was creating the model column, and in my mind, I knew that I also needed a year. But try to, at least at the beginning, try to restrain yourself from adding too much on every test. Try to just add the least amount of code that you need to address the current error. Once that error is gone, then run the test again and you get a new error and rinse and repeat. So the year column has been added. Let's run the test one more time. And now we get again to the point where everything is in place. We have models, we have relationships, but the page itself is not rendering the, what is it? The brand. So now we have to edit the components, template, sorry. So I'm going to close a few things here, clean it up, and the components template, it's in resources, views, livewire, car list.blade.php. And right now it's just an empty template because she competes with no one. No one can compete with her. So again, since I don't want to get into specifics about how is this rendered or how is it going to look, no, I just want to see the title in the page. And since I'm dealing with a list of values, I'm just going to do simple table. Table, T body. Yeah, I don't even care about the headings. That's how fast we need to get this over with. So T body, and then for each, and I'm expecting this to have a list of cars. We'll get to that in a second. So for each cars as car, and we have a row and a column, and this column will have the car brand. So it'll be car brand name. We already tested that the car has a brand, so we can safely use that brand to get the name. And this is just the amount of code that I need for that error, which is going to create a few more errors, but we'll solve them one by one. So let's run the test again. Undefined variable cars. Okay, so we want to use a cars variable in the components template, but that variable has not been defined. So let's go ahead and define it in the component class. So we go to app, livewire, car list, and let's define a public. This is going to be a collection. Illumini Database Eloquent collection. I'm expecting to use models here, so I'm just getting ahead of it. And this is going to be called cars, and that should give me a variable defined in the component, which is all I need for the error. So let's run the test again and get a new error. Argument must be of type array object, null given. So it's complaining because we are trying to use null for the for each loop. So now we have to initialize this as an array or a collection. For that, we're going to use the mount method. Public function mount. And in here, we're going to initialize the cars variable as a collection, empty collection. I don't know if that's going to work, but let's see. might complain about the type. Cannot assign illuminate that I imagine so. Illuminate support collection to property of type illuminate database eloquent collection. All right, so let's think the least amount of code that we can add here will solve the problem. And that is just call car all. Just get all the cars and put that into this variable here. Ooh. Typo there. Okay, back to the template, but this is good because now we have moved on from the brand, and now we are in the model. It's expecting the Corolla model to be shown in the page, and it's not doing that. So we can go back to the template, add another column to the table, and just display the model. Save that and run again. Now it's complaining about the year. We're moving at a steady pace. Add another column and display the car year. Ooh, year. Save that, run test again, and now we have a passing test. Awesome. So we completed all of these tests. We show the car model, brand, and year. That forced us to create another test for the car model and make sure that it has a brand. And now we are showing that very, very basic information in our page, which is perfect. It's a perfect starting point. It may not seem that way, but at least it gets you started. And that's the hardest part on every single project, just getting started. And we just did. So that's half the work. I think we're running at 52 minutes already. So I'm gonna make a cut here just so that I think this is a very good stopping point. We have our first project, we have our first tests, and we are showing information in the component. We don't have any routes, we just have a library component that is showing very basic information on the screen. We don't care how it looks, we just care that it works. But since we're going to eventually use Filament for all of this, next week we are going to make a rework of this. We're not going to touch the test, but we are going to rework how we display that information on the screen. And we are going to introduce filament tables, and we are going to use filament tables on the Livewire component. Not panels yet. That's going to be for us a future session. So we're going to do that rework, and once we have that, we are going to work on creating custom table rows. That's going to be very interesting because if you didn't know, you have the ability to completely customize how the rows look on a table, and that's how you get very interesting looking tables. You can use anything you want, any HTML, classes, etc. And for that, we are going to use the component that I just created on a different video, which is a card with a carousel integrated in it. So if you have time, go watch that video because we are going to use that code in our project for adding custom table rows to a filament table. So go watch that after this if you're interested. And once we get that set up, we're going to then move to the administration side. We're going to write tests for a panel where the user can go in and create listings and create cars that they want to sell. So that's all in the coming weeks. If you don't want to miss any of the future live streams, don't forget to subscribe to the channel If you found this live stream helpful, don't forget to leave a like. It's free and it really helps. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. And that didn't work.